Finally, the Assange saga begins to draw to a close. Assange is now a free man, but actual freedom awaits a trip to Australia via the US territory, the Northern Mariana Islands that lie physically closer to Australia than they do to the mainland US territory. So he will not be tried within the US, he will plead guilty instead in a jurisdiction in those islands away from the US. The authorities there will then let him go. The choice of this location turned out to be the tipping point in the compromise talks that have been underway for a while, at a point quite literally in the seas in between. So the US can now say he was sent to US custody, their jurisdiction after all, and released by a US court, and Assange can avoid going to the US that he has long resisted. The language of the deal was that the US Justice Department would seek a 62-month sentence and consider it served in Belmarsh prison, where Assange has been lodged about that long in London. So he would spend no time now in US custody. The British and Australian governments have been pushing for a deal along these lines for some time now, and US President Biden did not seem particularly keen to throw him into an American prison either. He had said on April the 11th that the US is considering an Australian request to drop prosecution. The US official who had leaked the bulk of the documents had been arrested earlier in the US and sentenced to 35 years in prison until former President Barack Obama commuted her sentence in 2017. A compromise in the case of Assange has proved difficult to reach. In fact, as recent as the last court hearing in London only last month, Assange's lawyers were arguing that any sovereign guarantee from the US government that they would not actually incarcerate Assange in the US, and such a guarantee was forthcoming, that this would not be acceptable on the grounds that US courts are independent of the government. All this while, the courts in London have passed the matter from one hearing to another, allowing one appeal and another review here, one postponement after another really. But all this was to allow time for a compromise to be reached between governments. An extradition order from a London court would have been difficult for a British court given the strong public opposition to such an order. On the other hand, an outright refusal would have been awkward for ties with the US. This present path avoids either of those dangers. Assange has been charged in the US with obtaining and publishing classified information that authorities there had said compromised national security and the safety of security personnel. The published information through Wikileaks included information about a US Apache helicopter attack, several details of US operations in Afghanistan. All this was part of about 10 million documents of internal communication among US officials that was leaked to Wikileaks. No one will be very surprised now if Assange looks to get back to that sort of business again. It's what has defined him.